Hi, I'm Lene St. John from the MamaSutra.net, and I thought I would tell you a story about a conversation that I had with my daughter. My daughter is 10 years old, and I call her Marcia. She and I had a conversation about a toy that I left out. You may have read one of the stories that I've told before about when she found a bullet vibrator. I don't hide my things. I do put them away, but sometimes I forget, and that's not a big deal. But so she found a cock ring. And the one I had just had a conversation with a friend of mine about cock rings and how they can be useful, and also just talked about them on the Sex Talk radio show. And so this version is very similar to the Screaming O version I like, and it's inexpensive. You can get them at Rite Aid, CVS. But anyway, I had this out, and she said, "Mom, what's that for?" And I said, "Well, it's a cock ring." She said, "What do you do with that?" I said, "Well, a man puts it around his penis." Do you remember the conversation we had about the bullet vibrator? She's like, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, this is kind of the same thing for men." And she said, "Well, does it stretch? How does it fit?" I said, "Well, yeah, it stretches quite a bit." I don't remember if I showed her how much they stretch, but I said, "Yeah, it stretches quite a bit." And I said, penises, just like vulvas, come in all different all different lengths and girths and angles. And she said, "Well, can that fit around a really big penis?" I said, "Well, yeah, it stretches quite a bit." And she said, like, "So-and-so's penis?" Referring to my last boyfriend. And I was like, well, no. His isn't particularly big or small. And I said, "Well, and your dad had a different penis than the so-and-so." And I'll call that person Blake. Different size penis than Blake, but it was also different from my previous boyfriend, Mike. And she said, "You saw Mike's penis too?" Well, yeah. She said, "Wow, you've seen a lot of penises in your day." I just, I kind of laughed and said, "Well, I not that many, but I've seen more than that. Yeah, it's not a big deal." But her reaction was more just sort of matter of fact than astonished or shocked or shaming, and so yeah, it's not a big deal. But I just thought her statement was just very funny. We try to teach our kids without judgment or shame, and sharing that I'd seen 3 other penises was sort of interesting for her. So I guess the bottom line here is you might be slightly embarrassed by telling your kids some things, but it's totally okay to acknowledge that you're embarrassed. They know you're human. It's entirely fine for your children to see you show emotion. I think the problem is when we don't allow our children to see us show emotion. If we don't allow our children to see us cry or laugh or whatever, it's okay to communicate your feelings and to show them and to model the behavior of being able to show emotion. The other thing that is important to note here is that it's okay for you to it's okay for your children to know that you're a sexual being. Lots of cases, this is how kids got into the world to start with. So there is no shame in being a sexual person. I'm actually hoping, not only hoping, I'm seeing that being open with her, she is coming to me more with the questions she has. And I would much rather have her come to me with questions than, say, go to the internet or start asking some of her friends. It's entirely fine, in my opinion, for her to see that I'm a sexual being. And I'm not going to share exactly how many penises I have seen. It's a completely irrelevant number, much like asking your partner how many sexual partners they've had. It's not relevant. So I won't be sharing that number here either. But just know it's more than 3. Don't be worried about not putting away your toys, but just be prepared to have a conversation about it. Thanks for watching. If you like this video or want to hear more, send me a note through comments or through direct messaging. Again, this is Lene St. John from themamasutra.net. Thanks for watching.